like, some bands don't bring it live. They're technical. I don't know, maybe they're just not used to going to underground shows and playing underground shows as a kid. I don't know. And again, I still haven't seen footage of Concrete Lips. They could be completely malicious. I'm just using them as an example of me
Yeah.
thinking like, sometimes you see a band and it's pretty underwhelming live. There's just focus on playing the guitar and that's it. And I don't know. Me personally, I can't. The second we start playing, I can't stand still. I can't control myself. It's just energy, and it's not premeditated. I don't know. It's just something that I guess growing up, seeing the music I saw, even from like Paul Stanley to James Hetfield to Jerry Only, like I like when a musician just puts out 110%. Jerry Only for me was huge, like just old Misfits footage. The band was just so aggressive,
Mm.
and I feel like when you believe in your shit, that just is how you play.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to episode 155 of Into the Necrosphere. This week, I am visiting with the legendary Paul Delaney of Black Anvil out of New York. He came on the podcast to talk about Regenesis, their new record that has been dropped by Season of Mist Records. We also spoke about his long-standing ties to the New York hardcore scene, live performances, how he got into black metal, and much more. Trust me, this is an end-to-end listen, if ever there was one. A absolutely great guy and a phenomenally enjoyable conversation. Stick around because straight after that, there is lots more to come. I'm going to be talking this week about the new Trivax EP, The Serpent's Gaze, and then as per usual, I will be jumping on a couple of metal news websites, most likely Metal Storm, possibly Blabbermouth, and I will be listening to some new music, giving you my first impressions of what I hear, and we will set the world to rights and have us a grand old time. If you are new to the podcast, please do consider subscribing on your podcasting platform of choice. I post new episodes every Tuesday for free on YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Amazon, and wherever else you download podcasts from. Also, make sure that you follow me on social media and check out the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store, because nothing says Christmas, or I should say Merry Christmas, Grandma, quite like an Into the Necrosphere hoodie or t-shirt. Also, perhaps most importantly, make sure that you are following and supporting my fellow horsemen of the podcast apocalypse as we declare war against substandard, woke, shitty content by bringing the heat nearly every day of the week. On a Monday, Brandon Legion brings you Horrorwolf 666. On a Wednesday, my brother Mike Hill of Tombs and Scorpion Throne drops some knowledge with Everything Went Black. He returns on a Thursday alongside Mike Scandado and Jeff Kashid, reviewing horror movies old and new on Necromaniacs. And then on a Sunday, my friend Carl Hikara delivers the Devil's Message on the Lord's Day with Sol Knox. I was on his podcast this past Sunday. We spoke about and celebrated the discography of one Glenn Danzig, particularly with an emphasis on some of the later works that many people turn their nose up at, but both Carl and I thoroughly enjoy. Make sure you check that episode out, and make sure that, as I said, you are subscribed to and following all of my fellow horsemen of the podcast apocalypse. My friends, on that note, please welcome right now to the podcast Mr. Paul Delaney of Black Anvil. You are probably busy packing your suitcases and loading up on the heroin and the animals for sacrifice and stuff like that for this Cannibal Corpse immolation tour, I would imagine.
All that shit's packed up, but luggage and gear is pending still. Yeah.
Luggage, gear, and all of the usual satanic paraphernalia that you metal folk take with you on the road. That is a absolute beastly lineup, though. I mean, like if I was about to say, like, if I were in a band and someone said like you could play on that lineup, I'd fucking shit myself. I think it's just like,
yeah, it's like three legendary bands and us. Like,
yeah,
luck of the draw there, and we're pretty honored to be a part of that.
How did that happen? How did it come together?
A guy that books us books all the other bands. He's a close friend also, and it's just one of those things where the offer came our way. We have a new album out, luckily in time, and it just right place, right time. And it worked.
And how long are you guys going to be out on the road with them for?
It's 5 weeks.
Yeah. So it's a
big one.
reasonable run of dates.
Yeah, and we haven't obviously haven't toured. We did a week with Immolation in March, and that was like, wow, we're rusty. Even sitting home and doing fucking yoga doesn't. It doesn't. It's a different ball game. Just playing and getting those motor skills back. It was rough. So, but we feel pretty good about this. Despite the length of it, it's just that's all in your head. Like when we're in it, I'm sure it'll be fine.
How does Immolation's crowd, I would imagine, is reasonably open-minded, but how did their audience respond to you on that tour that you did with them earlier?
We played, we two of the shows that are usually great markets for us, Toronto and Montreal. We played the first week Canada lifted restrictions and venues were running at 100 cap. It was only 50 cap. Up until that Sunday, and then we come in and we play Wednesday, Thursday in Canada, and it seemed people were still reluctant to go to shows, and for the most part, that little dip of the woods, with the exception of the finale in New York, and it was like a manic show. Those shows were a bit strange. It just seemed again like people were reluctant to be walking in the door for a couple of those gigs. That being said, crowd-wise, it was as good as it could be, and pretty open to us being, people like to compare things sonically, and it's not death metal, it's not enough black metal, it's not enough this or that. But luckily, I believe we bring it hard enough live that if you're in the room, it's like, okay, I see what these guys are about.
And I think the great thing about Immolation is their music kind of straddles the fence where you can take out or they can take out a black metal band, and their audience would be reasonably accepting of it. It's not like if you took out a full blown black metal band, maybe with a crowd whose fans are known to be a bit more conservative, Slayer or somebody like that. Immolation kind of they seem to sort of have their own organic audience, that is slightly different from the norm, which is awesome.
They're one of the most important bands to me. They're actually the reason we're a band in many ways. I was in a hardcore band in '96 with this. The drummer was this guy Alex Hernandez. He was in a death metal band from Queens called Fallen Christ, which is phenomenal, super underground. It's on Spotify if you're a death metal guy, which I have inkling to believe you might be.
I will definitely be checking that out. Yeah,
it's great. He was also in a grind band from New York called Disassociate. He was in a hardcore band with us. He quits in '96 to join Immolation, right after Here and After comes out, and we meet Rafe, who's I've been playing music with since. He joins the band, and it was total strange transition to go from this, crazy death metal drummer to a more, one kick pedal hardcore guy drummer. But Rafe is a metalhead. He comes from this, and yeah, I wouldn't have met him to this capacity had Immolation not poached Alex. So it's interesting how that just it's part of the story. It's an important part of the story.
And the thing, just because I wanted to ask you about that transition from kind of hardcore to black metal, because it's not something that it's interesting for me in that it's not unique to Black Anvil. It seems like a lot of bands, especially in the States, make that transition. Even though I think I'd be curious to get your take on the mentality behind it. But before I ask you that, just a last comment on Immolation. How fucking badass is that new Immolation record?
I think, and I don't think that they've made a bad record.
Yeah,
I think they're one of those bands that I could put up there with Maiden, give or take Blaze Bayley records. I still don't think Maiden has ever made a bad record. They're one of the few bands that has just never put out a bad record. And I think this far into it, the new record is it's like not the best thing. I don't want to be insulting and say it's the best thing they've done in years, but man, what they came up with in the last 3 years of sitting around is just, it's inspiring to see how much passion they have. And it's just such a powerful record. It has hooks. It has songwriting. It's fucking perfect. And they're perfect.
Yeah. My previous kind of high watermark for them was Kingdom of Conspiracy. And it was in part, I agree with you. I don't think they've ever put out a record that's poor. The high watermark for me was based, and I told this to Ross when I had him on the podcast, was based on All That Awaits Us, which I think is probably my favorite all-time Immolation song. It was interesting. He had some cool stories about how that vocal line for the big moment, like is darkness, all that awaits us, how that came about. But I would definitely say, I feel like this record really kind of it's almost like they took a look at the scene and then said, okay, the bar has been raised, because especially on the kind of blackened death metal side of things, there's just been so many good bands that have come out, but they really answer the call, in more ways than one. I agree with you. Like, the songwriting is so good, like the songcraft, like they really have command of what they're doing. And it's like all of all of the weapons in their arsenal, they're able to deploy at exactly the right time, in exactly the right measure. They hold back when they need to hold back. They turn on full blast when they need to turn on full blast, but they're an incredible band. And to be doing it at that level so consistently for such a long time blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind.
Yeah, there's many bands across the boards that have been around so long that you could tell just sort of mail it in, be it, down to the artwork even. And with them, it's as real as it gets, like I love that Ross and Bob know each other. Alex even knows them from the beginning as well. Like, they're just good friends, and their bond as people and Steve's been in the band since Alex left. So that's a real tight unit. And for that to just show in their work, it's not just a job for them. It's real, it's really inspiring. And I think very important. I wish there were more bands out there like that,
Yeah, and the thing is, that passion really comes out when you talk to any of them as well. Again, having had Ross on the podcast, there's still a hunger, from him, and there's still a love for what he does. Even though he's verging on or possibly slightly older than 50. And again, like people look at it and go, well, they've operated at a certain level for a certain time, so it's par for the course that they're going to keep doing that. But I don't think folks realize how difficult it actually is, where you've done it for such a long time, you've made so many records, and you've been in the game and in the scene for such a long time to still keep things fresh. Like, that's why I have so much respect for a band like Napalm Death. When Last of Napalm Death released anything that is even close to substandard, I mean, I would even stretch that argument to say when Last of Shane Embry released anything under his name, anything he's had anything to do with, that is not fucking excellent.
He's a very underrated bass player, man.
Mm.
He should be on the cover of like Bass Player magazine. He's just watching him play is not. It's almost inhuman how it just looks like fucking fumbling noise, but it's not. He's hitting every fucking note from the top to the bottom of the neck when he's playing. It's psychotic.
Yeah,
that's another band. Even in recent, they put out an EP before that new album, which has like one or two songs that are almost like post-punk, like Killing Joke type of. I don't know. It's just I love Napalm Death, and I agree with you 100%.
He's a huge Killing Joke and a huge Swans fan, and that really comes out in his music. And like, again, what I love is that they don't hold back on any of those influences, but even though they deploy those influences readily, the intensity of their music, is not phased by that whatsoever.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't sound phoned in. Like, how do you not really progress? Like, they managed to stay purely grindcore. Immolation stays purely death metal, but every time it sounds fresh. That to me is crazy, because when we write music, I always feel like it has to be slightly different to be fresh. And this is an example of like, no, it just has to be that fucking good. Work harder. Work harder.
So the hardcore transition. I mean, I'm a big hardcore fan, and I'm always curious, because in a way I appreciate the two styles of music for the same reasons. Like, I mean, I black metal, I'd say, is if someone had to press me on what's your favorite style of music, it would definitely be black metal. That's my go-to if I'm listening to anything. But in terms of hardcore, I've grown up with and always loved hardcore. Whether it's Madball, Terror, Sick of It All, Agnostic Front, all the way through to more obscure stuff. I mean, this new Botch single is an example. Just I said on the podcast the other day, is like, if that's not on your gym playlist, then you're not actually training. So it's like,
I haven't heard that. I saw that they
dude.
released a single, and I like that We Are the Romans record. I remember the first
Yeah.
record like annoying me, and when We Are the Romans came out, I'm like, all right, this is fucking like, there's something there, so I should check out the new one.
Dude, this is just
I trust you already.
Yeah, like the like I like Neanderthal hardcore. Like, I don't really want any clean singing. I don't want any niceties. I just want badassness. Like, I want toxic masculinity in sonic form. Is what I want. So, but yeah, that new Botch single is superb. But I guess my question is, like, if I had to, as an outside fan observer, like, try and outline the difference. Black metal is to me quite a solitary experience, whereas hardcore is quite a there's a group element or a group part to the dynamic, right? There's like they sing a lot about brotherhood and about the scene and about probably things that are in the main a lot more positive than the average black metal band. So how do you make that transition? And I'll again say, in your case, obviously, you've made that transition very, very effectively. I guess maybe let's start with what's the appeal. What was kind of the appeal to you of doing something that is, on the face of it, so radically different?
See, and I sort of already have my brain, it just turned into like an intersection of Tokyo when the light turns, like just thousands of people crossing the street, because it's such a good question. I do see a connection, and specifically coming from New York at the time of New York where I was coming up. I'm 45. I'm young in comparison to a lot of, Rafe is 54, our drummer. So, and Gary, founding members older than me. Alex, new guitar players, 47. So everyone's in this range of experiencing the second wave of hardcore, which was fucking violent and dangerous. And the brotherhood aspect, at least in New York, or the unity aspect, was sort of like us versus them. It wasn't like, yeah, hardcore rules, we love each other. Like, there's straight edge scene was maybe different, but New York specific for us was very street, and all the people that didn't totally fit in. Just like, going from metal shows or bigger shows to like going to ABC in Rio, which is like a punk venue, or CBGB's for the first time. I got to see like thuggy Spanish dudes at shows, at hardcore shows. I was like, wow, I go to school with all these guys and they think I'm a fucking, clown. So it was cool to just see this, this element. And, those are the people I grew up with. This is Madball, Crown of Thorns, and I've played bass for both of them, luckily. And yeah, the scene then was very passionate, very aggressive, very violent at times. New York was very violent. And when you look back at black metal, for us, again, saying getting into metal and then discovering hardcore through metal, like hardcore and punk, with like Metallica doing covers. You know what I mean? That's, for me, that's me hearing the Misfits for the first time. And then metal magazines is me seeing the fucking Bathory Goat for the first time, and like it was just all about optics. My mom bought me the first Deicide record at a record store in New York City just because it said death metal in the new section, and the cover looked cool. And I was like, fuck. And I remember the promo picture on the back of the CD was just menacing,
Yeah.
So a lot of that was just me always catering to heavy. And again, when I get into hardcore, I'm like, wow, this is right here into my face, and I can touch it, like metal is still sort of up here, even though death metal is playing smaller clubs, whatever. Agnostic Front would play with Malevolent Creation, there was always this line, this border. But with, let's say, black metal, everything that happened in Norway in the 90s, different results, different team players, this, that, the other thing. But again, it was like this sort of violent, angry, unaccepted youth that just, I don't know, I see some similarities. Granted, different thought process, different lyrical content, different ways of life, but this it's just a connection. It's something that I have always like felt a slight connection to, you know, or cared to focus on a bit more. It wasn't until like early 2000s that discovering Funeral Mist was like and I might be jumping all over the place here. So
Yeah, no, go. No, I'm
derail from.
I'm with you.
But I discovered Funeral Mist. I was wearing a Venom shirt, getting food. The guy behind the counter just comes out and asks. He's like, "Hey, is that a Venom shirt?" And I immediately got annoyed because it's like clearly a Venom shirt.
I was about to say, like, there's no mistaking that it's a Venom shirt.
Yeah. Like I was just like, "Yeah, man." And he's like, cool. He's like making the coffee. It's like, check out a band called Funeral Mist. And I was still annoyed, but I'm like, okay, you know? And I did. And it was this record store in San Francisco, Aquarius Records at the time. I believe it's connected to this Tumult Records, this whole little circle in San Francisco at the time. But they had sorry for all this noise in the background. They had a pretty interactive website where anything new, you could like sample music. You could sample like 30, 40 seconds of the song. And, you know, along with Funeral Mist, there's Death Spell Omega, Watain, and all this shit. Listening to Salvation for the first time, and this is out like a year or two at this point, I'm thinking like, wow, fuck, man, we're writing like Can't Take It Away, which is like the most simple hardcore song possible. And this is what this guy's doing by himself in fucking Sweden over there. And it was just, it just dawned on me like, wow, there's so much more we could do. Like, and I felt like there's a ceiling on our specific band, you know, like Kill Your Idols had a ceiling. And, you know, for Gorilla Biscuits, for example, that capped off and Walter did Quicksand, you know, he took his creativity to a different level. And I felt we wanted to do that. I personally did. I left Kill Your Idols and joined a band called Murmur Black, which was considered pop punk, but to me it was very heavy and dark, lyrically, musically. The singer of Kid Dynamite was the mastermind of the band, and he wrote everything. And I was on board pretty much from the beginning to the end. And yeah, it was you know, the bar was raised, and it was aggressive enough, but it wasn't like enough for me. You know, like I wanted something heavier, but I just never had the time. And when No More Black finally came to a halt, at this point, I'm like going crazy with all this black metal shit that's out, like early 2000s. And I reconnect with Kill Your Idols guys, and I'm like bullying them. Like, you have to listen to this. You have to listen to this. Antaeus Blood Libels was a record that, another one next to discovering Funeral Mist. I just couldn't believe it. You know, it was a game changer. And that was that was the one I would say that inspired us to that. And Frost putting out Monotheist, however we pronounce this, that album was like, fuck, man, like Tom Warrior just completely reinvented the band's sound. It was all really inspiring, and like the perfect time for us to want to explore something different. And now, how do we do this genuinely? You know, I don't want to just make a basement sounding demo, you know, like I don't want to just follow the cookie cutter black metal mold, but everything about this has been intriguing, and there's been a real deep dive. And yeah, we decided to do it our way. You know, this is a scene where, you know, fuck the rules, right? So fuck the rules, and fuck anyone who wants to come at us thinking that, you know, we aren't. I don't know. I consider us to be a black metal band. A lot of people don't, because of sonic value. And, you know, again, I'm not trying to pretend I'm so-and-so from this era. I think we capture New York, and we capture what we want, and still pay tribute to what we should regarding black metal, you know? And that to me was just this whole evolution of, again, from the beginning, being in a band with this crazy metal drummer doing blast beats, double bass, all this shit, like it's just always there. And I just never had the time of day to do this. And then again, I got to do it with people I fucking love. And yeah.
I think you hit on a very important point there as far as modern black metal is concerned, and it's the great thing about modern black metal and why I think it's such an exciting genre, and also in part why I said earlier it's kind of my go-to. It's not my go-to because I'm a huge fan of the first three Dark Throne records, and that's the only style of music I like listening to. I think the great thing about it is, and this was starting to move in that direction. I think especially around the time you got into it, there is the I think what the word that captures the black metal ethos, and it's particularly true now, is freedom. And I think you can be whoever you want to be in black metal, as far as what music what your approach is, what your how you produce your band, what elements you bring into the band. I mean, you get so much post-punk gothic stuff being thrown into music right now, or into black metal music. And I think as long as kind of the core, the almost sort of spiritual aesthetic, the essence of it is intact, and there's no one that can really question it. And you'll have purists, but what do they really mean?
I agree. A band like Watain, man. I see a lot of underground people now, and people I know, a lot of people shitting on that band because it seems like they're too above ground for the underground and too underground for the above ground. And I think that band is really responsible for a lot of people now that are into black metal being into black metal. They are the band that took that fucking genre to different heights. You had your Dimmu Borgir, you have all these other bands that got pretty famous, Satyricon, this, that, the other thing, but you never had anything so fucking dangerous like Watain. And we've toured with them. They are fucking wild people, and again, been in Madball. I'm a part of the crew that Madball is. I grew up around this element of people that, dangerous, for lack of a better term, can be, don't always want to be. And touring with them, I got the realest vibe as people that I get from people I grew up alongside that I trust. I'm very judgmental when it comes to, not a dick, but I'm always judging. I'm always looking to see. I have high expectations of people I like and care for, and it's very minimally. It's not often that I'm let down, but those guys just are the real deal, and I back that. I even went with my friend Nick that books them that I mentioned earlier. He was going to go out to the Wild Hunt record release show in Sweden. I was like, oh yeah. He was like, you should come. I was like, yeah, sure. It was the last time I saw Salim Lamucci from Devil's Blood, who I've known. I met him in the 90s through hardcore, and I didn't even realize, he remembered. And when the Devil's Blood comes out, that's a whole different story. But that was the last time I got to see him. We went to that show, and when I saw the hometown, Uppsala, it's like, this fucking makes sense. It's like fucking white trash, man. When I get off the train, at the train station, there was like a guy in a hockey jersey with a mullet rifling through the garbage. There's graffiti everywhere. And it just all made sense. It wasn't like, oh, they're nice guys from Sweden. Why are they so angry? The fucking town had like this seedy element to it, and all their people looked sketchy. And, it reminded me of home in a way, like I back it, and I'm glad they're real. So it's funny when I see now that they might not be cool to the underground black metal community. I don't like growing out of shit. As long as a band makes good fucking music and puts out good records and have conviction, I support it. So it's weird. This might not be the majority, but I do see this in certain circles, pockets here.
Yeah. But I mean, that's also, a symptom of social media. I think, the small minority will make the biggest noise. Again, it's not anything that I think I've touched on this a couple of times on this podcast too. This idea of your entire identity being wrapped up in the bands you listen to, when you aren't even part of the actual creative process. And then your kind of self-worth, for some people, it seems like their self-worth is dictated by how, obscure their favorite band is, or, the fact that, that they can name top, five bands off the top of their head that only released, 10 cassettes. I think it's
optics.
I was about to say it's optics, and it's fucking juvenile. It's to me, it's on a par with, you know, all of the woke nonsense in metal as well. That just, it has no place. So, and you know, me personally, I'm, you know, with Watain, I've probably gone the other way. I wasn't always convinced by them, and then this last record that they put out, I went through a very public awakening to actually enjoying it, because I was like, I do the section on the show where I do like a react segment, and I'll listen to a song for the first time, and I'll kind of give my opinion on it. I'll basically just read the news, and then whoever has put out singles that week, I listen to that and I say, okay, this is what I think of it. And I listened to, I think, the second single they put out, and I was like, this is fucking good. Like, I thought this was going to be a load of shit. I'm like busy, you know, getting ready here with my quips to start throwing shade at them. And it's like, no, man, I'm wrong. This is very good. And I listened to the record, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
He could write it. He could write a song, man.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I want to just go back to the hardcore stuff, because my friend Lee Orsifer, who I don't know if you know him, if you met him, he's a tattoo artist. He was an apprentice for Paul Booth at Last Rites Tattoo. But he and I spoke an awful lot, because he was about, I think he got to New York when he was 17, and this was like the early, like, to mid 90s. So he spoke to me, you know, about like what the hardcore scene was like then. And he said, you know, if you went to, he remembers going to Biohazard shows before they'd been signed, and he said if you went to one of those shows, it was like
the most violent shows.
You're taking your life in your own hands.
Biohazard had the most fucking violent shows. Even Life of Agony shows were fucking crazy, man. But Biohazard shows were menacing. Yeah.
Dude, I remember seeing them live the first time, and I wasn't even as big of a fan of theirs, but like I left that show a enormous fan. But I just remember the whole entire floor of the Kentish Town Forum in London just turned into a tumble dryer, and it was like, if you did not want to be part of the tumble dryer, then you either left the venue, you just had to leave the venue. Like, there was no getting around it. But how old were you when you were getting into hardcore, when you were kind of becoming involved in the scene?
Junior high school, so grade 7 or grade 8.
Yeah,
you know, a friend of mine acquired this mixtape, and it had Breakdown, Youth of Today, Agnostic Front, SFA, who's a 90s hardcore band from New York. I still have the tape. It had Whiteout, you know, that shit where you correct paper. It had Whiteout. The whole tape was whited out, and Hard was scratched out on one side and Core on the other.
Yeah,
and it had you know, a bunch of other you know, rando songs on it, but I had this one tape, and Breakdown I loved. It was just the Breakdown demo. That gripped me because his voice was really hard, you know. And at that point, it's just, you know, how do we find this stuff? And Agnostic Front is playing this show, and Leeway is playing here. And Leeway was another band on a different mix we had, and I got to see Leeway. One of my first show was Leeway, Icemen, and Lunatics. Yeah, and it was like, again, Leeway is an interesting band in this, because musically it's so metal, you know. Like, this is when hardcore starts, you know, Killing Time, Crumbsuckers, Leeway. Now it's like, now these guys can play their instruments, man. So the game is getting stepped up here. Leeway was like metal, but the singer was like this hip hoppy guy on stage with like a Yankees hat and a baseball jersey, and just visually I connected to it because I'm a fucking guy from Queens. That's like a hybrid of Guido, thug, metalhead. I don't know what you call it, but I connected with it because it was just, it was something you'd only see in New York, you know. It was the most New York thing, like the merging of metal and hip hop street culture, which I think is important. You know, it's part of our DNA, and I think that shows in the music, the way the lyrics have a flow to it. It's not just, you know, like Dr. Seuss type of rhymey snakes and chalices shit, you know. Like, we try to deliver in a different creative way. So yeah, I think a lot of that has, you know, is like, could get shunned for me giving hip hop props to the way we write music.
I was about to say, not on this podcast, because New York was also home to one of, if not possibly, in my opinion, the greatest hip hop collectives on the face of the planet, who almost certainly created the greatest hip hop album ever made, and that's Gravediggers. And I've shared an awful lot of love for 6 Feet Deep on this on this show. But it's like, if even if you're not a fan of hip hop, like that was the record that kind of turned me. I was like, this is fucking brilliant. Like, I mean, this was like in my phase where, you know, it was, if it's not black or death metal, I'm not interested in listening to it. But when I heard that record, when I heard Diary of a Madman for the first time, I was like, I've always said, like, the thing with music, no matter
And
what
even the
style
music
it is,
the video for
yeah,
that.
genius.
Sorry to cut you off, but
Yeah.
it's gloomy and dark.
Yeah.
And there's an aesthetic with them. They all, you know, the logo is everywhere. It's hard.
Yeah, no, 100%. And actually, to your point, like it's, and this was the point. Actually, sorry, this was the point I was busy making. It's like for me, it's always, no matter what style the music is, I need to be convinced, right? I have to be convinced that what that person is singing, what they're projecting, was at least in some way personal to them, right? I know that the the resurrector isn't running around with a fucking axe chopping women's heads off, but you know, the way that he was expressing himself, there was something in what he was doing there that was personal to himself, and that is true whether you're looking at Jazz Coleman, you know, performing Love Like Blood, or Mark Lanigan, you know, doing a Mark Lanigan song, or fucking, you know, Barney doing Napalm Death, or Ross doing Immolation, you know, or anything that you guys do. Or actually, you know, if we bring it full circle back to your your part of your black metal awakening, I mean, one dude who will convince you is Mortuus of Funeral Mist. You know, whether you see him on stage with Marduk, or I mean, anytime you hear a Funeral Mist record, I mean, if you in any way inclined towards darker, heavier music, and the hair is not standing up on the back of your neck, you're deaf. There's something
Yeah.
is.
He's that guy, man. I remember when he joined Marduk, I caught wind of it, and I remember scouring YouTube to see the first fucking footage of it, and it was like, let's say frightening. You know, I wasn't like scared, but it was impactful. Like I couldn't believe seeing him in the flesh. His presence was hard. It was still so mysterious. And the guy's voice is one of the most powerful voices I think I've ever experienced in my life. You know, I don't understand it. I don't understand it. The guy's like a fucking anomaly. And yeah, I remember seeing the early footage that leaked with him fronting Marduk was like groundbreaking, you know?
Yeah.
And that was, again, early 2000s. We got to tour with him, and just seeing that, you know, we played one show in LA. It was supposed to be in a real club, and it got moved to like some fucking, like a hall where you could rent out for like fucking an 80th birthday or like a kid's party, you know? It was fucking wild. It was predominantly Mexican in a super rough neighborhood, this town called Watts, which if you've ever listened to like California hip hop, Compton, Watts, all these fucking threatening neighborhoods. So yeah, they just booked they moved the show from like Hollywood to here, and someone set a Bible on fire while they were playing, and security went nuts and sprayed fucking pepper spray.
Yeah.
I watched him walk off stage and just accept the pepper spray. I was like fucking shocked. Everyone was like just not able to handle it. And I just watched him deal with it and walk right back on stage and deliver. And you could tell it was like how I would react to like minimal hot sauce, you know, like I'm still sitting at the table and able to eat my dinner and pretend and smile at you, but my mouth is burning. He did the same fucking thing with fucking Mace. And I was like, wow, this dude is fucking, it's the real deal. And then 2 shows later, he fucking slammed someone over his shoulder. It's like, all right.
I was just about to say like that, because I couldn't quite date what show it was, but there's like very famous footage of him doing like a judo, but he basically like judo throws the guy onto the monitor, and it's like super quick. Like you can see it's like complete muscle memory that he just grabs the guy and just flips him.
Yeah, it's a very casual like arm wrap around. And once he does that, I don't know how you manage to flip the body. You know, he leveled that fucking kid, and that was us, Marduk, and Knockmistium, and Merrimack perhaps. But yeah, seeing that was just, the whole crowd was like, like you heard the chill of the crowd over the music.
Yeah,
but again, why would you get on stage? Like, just looking at him on stage, I don't want to go on his fucking stage. You know, the same with Freddie Madball. I've seen people. I saw someone pull Freddie's fucking pants down on stage, and he got mutilated. rightfully so. Why would you do that to the the nicest guy in the room that will do anything for you, give you the shirt off of his back, but also craziest fucking guy in the room. Let's be real. Especially in Lindau, Germany, wherever the fuck we were. But yeah, it's just, I've never felt the need to want to poke at the toughest guy there,
No.
and I witnessed that and it hurt. It still hurts.
There's definitely, there's a thing about certain men, like when you shake their hands, when you meet them, there's an aura about that person that you just, I don't know if you have to be of a certain mindset to pick it up, but you just pick it up straight away. I've met only very briefly, but I met Freddie Madball. Definitely got that off him. Vinny Stigma is like the one that is always sticks in my mind. I was backstage. I'd interviewed Roger, and Vinny was around, and I walked up to him and I said, "Listen, I just want to say hello. Love Agnostic Front. I've loved Agnostic Front for a long time. You're a absolute legend." And he was super, very, very nice, but you can just tell there's like that behind the eyes. There's that intensity. Phil Anselmo was like that. Morgan from Marduk is like that. And I've not met Mortuus yet, but there's no doubting that's not a guy that you want to fuck around with.
I had a moment with him. I sat down next to him at one point. I told him Funeral Mist was inspiration for us to do this. I figured, like, let me throw this out there. What's gonna happen? I'll fucking try to fight him with a fucking chair. I'll lose, but I'll try to fight him. I'm like, he's very direct and to the point, which I respect. We're not fucking friends who are just touring together, but very humble, very nice. This is the first run of shows we do. We play New York together, and I like walked backstage through this curtain, and he was just with Rafe, the drummer, and he was just standing there, just in full garb, ready to go, facing us, all by himself in this weird hallway. And it was just walking into this room at that moment, and it's just, no one needs to be in this room. And I just fucking jetted to the right, and I walked in their backstage room, and I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, if I could have to get into it, we're gonna have to fight this fucking guy. What's going on? Like, I just saw him fucking the hip check this fucking guy. It was just one of these moments where, like, we laughed about it after, but we just caught a real moment. Like, there was no one around, and he was just standing there staring straight. And I opened the curtain face to face, maybe even 40 feet apart or something.
Yeah.
And I went the other way. When it comes to touring with bands like this, I completely respect privacy. I enjoy that a band like Watain has shit to do before they play. Anyone that takes himself seriously and has some sort of setup, prior to, do you think? So yeah, I interrupted a moment there, and he could have been any moment, but it was very fucking intense. And I won't forget that. It's another time, filling in for Madball. We played filling in for Madball. We played Fury Fest before it was Hellfest with Dissection. I might have been I was playing bass for H2O, whatever the fucking case was. Dissection was on right after us. And I get into this little green room area off the side of the stage. We're offloading, they're onloading. And I had to briefly walk over and be like, hey, really psyched to see you guys. I saw you in New York some years back. Happy to see you guys. And the singer was very humble. I could tell he was a little annoyed, and there was like this fucking security detail all over the place. And he was like, yeah, man, cool. I got the vibe. He was totally friendly, but something was off. I was like, get the fuck out of there, A strange little room to be in, like a 10 by 10 room, Madball and Dissection. And it turns out they had crazy beef with Megadeth, and Mustaine hired some security. Like, there was like security on Dissection for this festival or whatever. But yeah, that was one of these tense moments where it's like everyone in this room is a complete animal.
Yeah. Was that? I would assume that would be after John had gotten out of prison already.
Yeah. This was 2006 or something, or 4, around there. I would say right after it might even have been before the record came out, Reading Chaos, but it was during that run.
Yeah. And I'd also have bet, I don't give a shit how much of a fucking Jitkindo master Mustaine thinks that he is. If it went down between him and John, I would, and I were a betting man, I know my money would be on.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's in the eyes, man. It's in the
Yeah.
eyes.
No, one
There's that.
100%.
Yep.
You talk about violent shows, by the way, and I'll get to more Black Anvil stuff in a second. But you made me think of something. You almost surely know the Live at Budokan Stormtroopers of Death record.
Dude, I
Billy
watched
Milano
this two
fucking
days ago.
smacking the dude with a microphone. I mean, that was I remember seeing that when I was about probably 15, 16 years old. And I've been to some shows because I grew up in South Africa. So I only moved to the UK when I was 21. So, at that point, my experience of shows was very limited, and my experience of seeing like bands that I liked, was limited to whatever we could, scratch around and find or dub from somebody. But seeing that was eye opening. It's like, people got seriously
super
hurt
funny
in
you
that
mentioned
crowd.
that. I don't know how it came up, but all the guys are in town. We don't all live in New York at the moment. All the guys are in town to rehearse for like a week, and Jeremy, the guitar player, staying with me. For whatever reason, 2 nights ago, I put that on. I'm like, "Have you ever seen SOD live at the Ritz?" And I was like, "The live at Budokan." We were discussing it. He's like, "No, I have this other live record from Chicago." I was like, and I was like, "You just need to watch the intro into the first song."
Mm.
Billy Milano jumps off the fucking monitors, off the PA. It's seeing that is still so intense. And then we ended up watching that into the Sick of It All Agnostic Front Gorilla Biscuits home video from the same era. And again, it was Billy Milano, fucking maniac. I
Yeah.
know that feeling that you experienced because I did too when I was young. I'm like, what the fuck?
But it's just like, the thing with him as well, he's one of these dudes that just has brilliant command of the crowd. Like when they do and I mean the music is also written to create that sort of response, that engagement with the audience. Like when they do Kill Yourself, right when that breakdown kicks in and Billy's like, "Let's see you motherfuckers move," and that crowd is just going ballistic. That's always something to me that's been, excluding the very best of the best. If I compare hardcore live shows to black metal, as much as black metal is my preferred style of music, I've always preferred going to hardcore shows because the craziness, the chaos, like the unpredictability of like anything can happen. You don't often find that with a lot of black metal bands. I've not seen you guys play yet, but I did notice like you guys are very physically energetic. Like there's some of that hardcore like approach that is stuck in the way that you guys deliver your music. But what, if anything, do you think that that black metal musicians generally could learn or take away from hardcore and that approach to like playing live that hardcore bands have?
Interesting. And this is something I always think about, like certain bands will be playing live and I'm always like, how's it going to be live? They're probably just going to stand there, like Concrete Winds just played in New York. And I unfortunately had to miss the show. I love this fucking band. Two incredible records. I don't know if if you're familiar with them at all. Concrete Winds from Finland. It's fucking out of control. Chaos, like death black metal. It's just insane music. I don't know how you write music like this. They just played New York and I was wondering, I'm like, some bands don't bring it live. They're technical. I don't know, maybe they're just not used to going to underground shows and playing underground shows as a kid. I don't know. And again, I still haven't seen footage of Concrete Winds. They could be completely malicious. I'm just using them as an example of me thinking like, sometimes you see a band and it's pretty underwhelming live. There's just focus on playing the guitar and that's it. And I don't know. Me personally, I can't, the second we start playing, I can't stand still. I can't control myself. It's just energy. And, it's not premeditated. I don't know. It's just something that I guess growing up, seeing the music I saw, even from like Paul Stanley to James Hetfield to Jerry Only, like I like when a musician just puts out 110%. Jerry Only for me was huge, like just old Misfits footage. The band was just so aggressive, and I feel like when you believe in your shit, that just is how you play, It's it's just in the upbringing. But I don't know. I guess maybe watch those two VHSs, the SOD one and the AF Sick of It All one.
I was just about to say,
maybe
learn from the masters.
Yeah,
I think it's an interesting point you make. If you believe in your shit, you know that energy is going to come out of you, because that's always been my thing. It's like I don't like seeing bands play live and then it feels to me like I'm at a rehearsal, right? I want that engagement. I want the interaction. The greatest disappointment ever for me was Zyklon when I saw them play, and I saw them play multiple times. But it was a band whose music I loved so much when I listened to the record. And then when I saw them play live, it's like just dead. They didn't even talk directly to the audience in between songs. They turned around and spoke to each other. It's like, I know you guys you're not obliged to speak to us, but Jesus Christ, this really feels like a glorified band rehearsal. And then you compare that to something like Biohazard. That's just a whole different vibe. I've seen them live probably 6-7 times now, and every single time they are fucking incredible. Incredible enough to bring an old man like me out of mosh retirement. So,
yeah, and apparently you'll be seeing them again.
Yeah, dude, I saw they playing live next year. I already told my girlfriend, like, I'm not even a guy who really likes going to festivals, but they're playing the Bloodstock Festival. I will almost definitely go to that. I'm gonna have to probably like train beforehand to prepare myself for it. But yeah, dude, I can't fucking wait. You can't miss that.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of real men and real dudes, I was so pleasantly surprised when I saw that Danny Diablo has made his debut on a black metal record. when I saw that he was a guest on Regenesis. How did that happen? And I would assume you've known Danny for a long time.
Yeah, he's a brother. He's a friend that I've known for years. Again, I'm playing bass in the recently activated OG lineup of Crown of Thorns with Mike Dijon and Dimmy, like the 3 OG members. The bass player always sort of revolved. They asked me to do it, and for me, it was like an honor, because Crown of Thorns was one of the different hardcore bands from that time. It wasn't Bulldoze, it wasn't 25 to Life. It was like melodic, and yet you have Isaac, who sounds like he drinks fucking battery acid. It was just like this perfect mix, like two things you wouldn't expect to go, like putting ice cream on pizza or something, but this band just always did it for me. And, knowing him over the years, having a deeper connection with our thing, like he casually said when we were I mentioned like we were recording in a week or two, and he's like, let me do backups. And I thought about it, discussing with the guys. I'm like, Isaac wants to do backups, and I think we could give him this verse. It was already written, There's like one verse of the song where I'm like, his voice would just be perfect. And everyone was like, fuck yeah. It makes total sense. It makes sense because he's my brother, and he's someone I love. And again, this goes back to me having my guard up, where, maybe it would be cooler if I had this guy from this band from Scandinavia doing guest vocal. That would look better to the elitists, but
to the masses.
I'm going to get someone that's important to me personally, who, the song is very relative to New York. We recorded in Queens, where very close to where he grew up. And yeah, it was it's just one of those things where it made sense, and it might not make sense to someone that doesn't understand the full spectrum of it. But his, I don't know if you've heard it yet, but his voice fits. It's perfect. It's why not do something outside the box? Why not have someone that's important to us contribute to something that's important to us? That to me is so much more important than optics. I bring my people into the fold, and he does the same for me, and that's how it works. So it's very cool for us. Like, I'm honored that he took the time to do that, because he does that for a lot of his people, but it's just special for me.
And he's also, I think a lot of people overlook, maybe, or who wouldn't know him would overlook the fact that, in spite of all of the different types of music he's done, he loves metal. And I see him, like, in interviews and stuff, referencing Celtic Frost and referencing Testament and bands like that. as far as I'm concerned, if you're down with Testament, you're already, you've already gained some degree of credibility.
Yeah, he's got a huge bolt thrower tattoo on his shoulder. He knows what's up.
Go. I was about to say
Yeah.
he's in the right ballpark. But to answer your question, no, I've not heard the whole album yet. So I've not heard that song. I've heard the 3 singles you guys have put out. And I absolutely love that. Like, I think the thing that has struck me about those 3 singles, and I said it on the news rant segment when I did my first impressions of them as well. I said there's definitely a far more aggressive feel to the new music than there was to As Was, and I loved As Was. The year that it came out is one of my favorite records. But there's definitely, like, it feels like in a weird way, if I think about that analogy of the weapons in your arsenal, I listened to some of the 3 new songs I've heard so far, and it feels like the dial's been turned up on every single thing. Like, you got the kind of melodic clean vocals being deployed in a really, really effective way, but the actual music packs a lot more punch. When the kind of black metal vocals are there, they sound a lot more raspy and angry. As I said, I think the best way to describe it is just it's Black Anvil with the knobs turned up on every single element of the band.
That's how I felt too. Going into it, we had a discussion like, how do we trim the fat? Not that any of it was fat, but how do we dial this in a little more directly? And I'm like, what are you trying to tell me? My songs are too long, It's funny, the longest song after that conversation, the longest song on the record wasn't written by me, just to throw some people under the bus. And just to clear the air on my end, But yeah, I thought about that, and I like direct music. I like Ghost. Ghost is an inspiring band to me because I met Tobias a bunch through my friend Nick. He's their agent as well, and I like what he does. I like how much that guy cares about writing music, writing a song. It's great. People love to fucking hate them, and it's not my favorite band in the world, but when he puts out something new, I'm very intrigued to see where his mind goes and how he crafts it and what he's going to do next. And again, a lot of inspirations for me aren't necessarily the specific music I want to bite or rip off, but it's just what a band does that inspires me to want to be as creative as they are my way. Like a band like Balzer, for example. It's crazy. Like that band to me, he's a wild musician. I've never experienced anything like that. Touring with Immolation, and again, just their new record, these things that even though our records were written at the same time, but Immolation and his people are inspiring. And there's just a lot of things around that time of writing where I don't know. I think focusing on songwriting became like a strict priority, and I wanted there to be hooks to for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
I wanted there to be structure. I wanted each song to tell a story and like get to the top of the mountain and decline properly. And I also wanted the entire album to have the same structure that an individual song should have. I want the story to flow and for you to not get bored of it. And when I go back and listen to some of our earlier work, I could see where the story might, maybe the stretch of the road is a little long. And again, at time and place, those roads needed to be that long. We needed to explore that ground and that territory and do what we did. But so like, how do we consciously tighten it up and write something a little more with a little more precision, but not overthink that, and I'm also a very limited musician when it comes to playing guitar. Like, I write mostly on guitar at home, and I'm limited. I get guys in the band that are better than me, so I could like make it an attempt, and it's like, well, you could play it better, so try to play that. And they just look at me like you copy pasted a bunch of shit that doesn't make sense. Again, listen to you could do it. You're better than me, So and when the weakest link in the band is performing better than the highest link, that's then we got to have a conversation. We got to bring management in. But like Jeremy's phenomenal guitar player. His guitar solos are just, the guy's a fucking beast. Rafe is a beast. So, and I'm just me trying to live up to, to their level of musicianship. It's like, and I realize I have this like little box that I'm in when it comes to my writing, and I know my limitations. I know my tricks. That being said, how do I use that to manage and just acknowledge my simplicity and take different turns and be different? I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, no, it does.
I have to use my limitations as my inspiration to not be repetitive and generic. And it's challenging, but again, having these guys that could outdo me and everything is also like a huge challenge. Like, how do I bring shit to the table that is like is their level when I'm not at that level of musicianship? Like, and again, I'm very confident. I'm very happy with the way I lay my shit down. Bass live, my sound, this, that, the other thing. I'm confident. It's like, I know what I got going on there, but I also know what I'm good at and what I bring to the table and where I lack, and, Ray, for instance, is a drummer who has always pushed me creatively. And I realize as I get older, there are times where I want to actually fucking take his head off with my bass, when it comes to writing and arranging, and him being like, I don't like it, it's boring, or this or that. I get mad, but after I shake that off, I think about it and I realize that he's just thinking about the song and he's challenging me. And my goal is to not make these guys bored when I write, and vice versa. I like when things are brought to me and I'm like, ooh, that's cool. Like, I would never think this. That's the beauty of a collective. But yeah, I to somewhat answer the question, I think, I just, we got to As Was, which is like the bridge of the song, and now it's time to drive that song fucking home. Like, Hail, Death, and As Was, this record to me have like this trilogy feel. And I think those three records have the same flow as, perhaps I've been saying, the writing of a song or the structure of an album. I don't know. It felt good to stay heavy,
You touched on something interesting earlier when you were talking about all these bands and all this different type of music that inspires you. And one of the things that I remember thinking the first time that I heard As Was, and particularly the first time I heard my favorite track off As Was, which is the closing track, Ultra, I was like, this is a true celebration of music. Like, not just black metal, not just death metal. This is whatever went into the creation of the song is the overriding principle is a love of music, like in all of its forms. But that excitement and that joy that you feel from listening to something that that really moves you, this song kind of captures it. And I think part of that's part of what made that album so effective to me. I think it's such a beautiful song to bookend the record with.
Thank you.
But yeah, I had to mention that because it's as you were talking about like all of those things that inspire you, I was like, okay, it makes more sense to me that track ended up sounding like it sounded.
That was the last song written for that album, and I sent Necromorphus a very crude demo of it, like probably the most ghetto sounding demo I've ever made, just because we were like, there's a lack of time. Like, we had it down in the room when we played it, but I sent him this ahead of time, and I remember him telling me, he's like, I really enjoy all these songs. He's like, this is great. He told me it reminded him of Bathory, which was, again, this guy played drums on Salvation, this record that I love so much. So his opinion, it matters to me. I'm not starstruck. If he didn't like it, go fuck yourself, like anyone else. But I like that he gave us this nod to something that I would assume is very passionate to him. He did, however, critique Ultra and said, I do not understand the vision for this song whatsoever. And he's like, I think everything is great. He's like, I don't understand what you're going for with the song. And again, the demo, I had to write him. I'm like, it's very chopped up from a phone recording to like programmed drums. I'm like, trust me, the idea is there. This is just all I could send you because I have like tomorrow morning we load to the studio. But trust me, it's in my head. It's going to be great. And again, we joked after the fact, but yeah, that was a very moody, different one. Again, it was like the end of the line, and it felt like an album was written, and I just had this one idea left, and it was mellow. I don't know. It was just like coming down off of a high. It was almost like a weird, depressing time, even though we're about to go make the record. It's just I can't explain the mood, but I remember it. You know, I just can't put it into words. I remember this weird, gloomy sadness I had trying to throw the song together. Of course, you know, I always give props to bands like Sunny Day Real Estate and certain like these the real OG emo bands from 90s and very early 2000s. Some of those bands, like Sunny Day, for example, I think is hard as fuck and still means something to me. Still an inspiring band. And I don't know. Again, this was me experimenting with like chord configurations that I can't play. You know, I'm like, how do I do something that I can't? That's above my pay grade that these guys could play. And that was just one of those songs. You know, it was a little different for us. You know,
who did out of interest? Who did the clean vocals at the end of that? At the end of that track,
that record was all me. All the vocals were me, even though I prefer we all take part in the vocals since we're all going to be doing it live. But due to time constraints in the studio, like I just had it all so programmed in my head from doing all the demos. It just made sense. I'm like, I'll just do it. I know what all the layers are. Fuck it. I'll do it. And live, we could all do it. You know, like I trust everyone. Like, you know, again, they're all better than me. So, yeah, I ended up just like layering the fuck out of it. I psychotically had it in my head and had the demo session up so I could translate it properly.
Where did you learn to sing?
Rafe, I had to.
Yeah,
I had to impress him. You know, he wanted to step it up and add this shit, and I had to. So I tried. I still struggle with it. I don't think it's always there. I'm not very confident with the clean voice, but I guess it doesn't matter if it's good or not. You know, it's there, and I try. So that I can live with that. You know.
no,
It's never going to be
think
perfect.
I think it sounds fantastic, but also I think when it comes to clean singing, I think if the emotion is there, then technical perfection isn't necessarily a prerequisite, right? If you think about Ian MacKaye, if you had to play a Fugazi record to a vocal coach, they would say this is awful. But both of those dudes sound fucking fantastic because it's so imperfect, but because there's so much emotion coming out of them when they sing those songs. I think of something like Rend It or something like that. It's perfect because of that imperfection.
I don't know if you're familiar with hot water music. I would assume that you probably are.
Yeah.
But earlier hot water music to me, it's like before they learned how to sing, there was this like wild dynamic with the two voices. Like at times almost like they can't sing, but they can, and it was just so pure and there was a charm to it, and I feel like we clean it up in the studio as best as we can, but live it's choppy. So I'm not that good at it. But I like these earlier bands that just did it to do it. Even a hardcore band like H2O in the beginning, which definitely not an inspiration on us musically, but in the beginning. He just sang his way. Even Isaac with Crown of Thorns, he just sang his way. And there are times where if you like isolated those vocals and played it for a random person, they'd go, "Fuck you, making me listen." You're like, yeah. What are we doing here? But again, it's the passion before fashion, right? Like
100%.
I'm gonna, and I could get there. I might need help here and there. I got these other guys backing me up, and like I said, live, I can admit I'm not 100% with it, but I don't even care. I don't need to be. I am 100%. So
yeah. But definitely, I'm just as I'm kind of going through these examples in my head now, of the when you said passion before fashion. Another great example, Greg Dooley of Afghan Wigs. I saw a live show the other day, this like probably from about 10, 15 years ago, unplugged show with just him and Mark Lanigan. And I mean, Mark Lanigan can sound good, no matter how much heroin he's had beforehand. I mean, the guy was just blessed with a fucking voice that is otherworldly. But I mean, Greg Dooley, his voice really, like, especially when you hear it live, he goes off key so many times. It's unreal, but it sounds fucking brilliant. It's like there's a real charm to the fact that he can't hold the note properly for an extended period of time.
Even with like a recording, like when you hear these, like a modern Exodus record or like a Meshuggah record, these things that sound so perfect. I like when things don't sound perfect. I like when you can hear like hi-hats clicking or some noise in the background here and there. I like a rawness to a record. It doesn't mean it has to sound like shit, but I like when you can hear that it's human, and not just totally. I like imperfection. I think it speaks when things aren't executed to a T. It gives character.
I was just about to say as well, I find those are the records that inspire the most emotion, because because when they're captured in the right way, that's the where the greatest emotion was captured on record. The last time Mike was on, we did a countdown of our top 6 favorite black metal records of the 1990s, and one of the records we spoke about a lot was Battles in the North. And I mean, that record is famous for how many mistakes I've just left on the record, but it's so fucking brilliant. I mean, like you can't. I can barely think of the phrase black metal without at least like 5 seconds of Battles in the North popping into my head somehow. But I mean, if you had taken that to, like, who was big noise at the time, like Peter Tägtgren, like he did some really good stuff, and obviously he did some of their later records. But if they had recorded Battles in the North in the same way that they had recorded At the Heart of Winter or Sons of Northern Darkness, it wouldn't be the same album. It wouldn't have the same appeal.
Charm,
that it had.
I agree. I totally agree. There's the the first Kill Your Idols EP that I play on, which is the second EP, because I joined right after the first EP comes out. There's one song where the take was so great and the drummer just missed the snare, completely misses the snare, and like the breakdown, let's call it mosh part for lack of a better term. And it almost became a thing when we would play it live. Like when Rafe joins the band, we would like look at each other, like he did a 4-tom instead of the snare in that part. Like it almost became a joke. But I remember when we listened back, like the take was so good, we were like, fuck it, it's worth it. Let's just, who cares about the snare? So at times it made me a little crazy. Like, why didn't we just? It's fucking the easiest song in the world to play. Why didn't we just go back and retrack the drums? But again, it was before things were totally digital, and it was just a race against the clock, and the energy of the entire take wasn't worth redoing, and we left it. And there's a little story to that mistake. And I always, when you hear other records that have these random things, you're like, what the fuck was that? Like it's a moment in time that was captured, and I think that is interesting.
Yeah. So you guys have got your 5-week run coming up with Cannibal Corpse and Immolation now. What is coming up after that for you?
We have a run of dates that we're working on in March in the States, a co-headliner, which isn't totally assembled yet. And following that, it's still sort of up in the air. We're hoping to do a European run. There's little rumblings going on with potentially someone that we discussed in this conversation about doing Europe with them in 2023, and hopefully something decent size in the fall of 2023 in the States again. So I'm hoping to just keep as busy as possible, and then and just do some work. It's been a while, and we're pretty proud of this.
And I was about to say, the Regenesis was written a while back already. So do you foresee there being a reasonably quick turnaround, at least chronologically, in terms of the next record coming out?
It's wild. It was written before we signed to Season of Mist.
Yeah.
We finished it in 2019 with the idea of we signed February 2020, and let's get in the studio in the spring. And I just decided to wait. I remember Tombs actually was in the studio like April, May, like my kid was like, I don't give a fuck. You know, like when everyone's still scared to throw their garbage out because you might get COVID, you know, like walking 3 feet in front of your house. I was guilty of that shit too. I'm like, fucking, I didn't want to see my neighbor's face. I fucking hit him, you know? But Mike was just like, he was like, I'm going to fucking Jersey. Fuck that, making a record, you know? And I was like, fuck, we should do this too, you know? But we had one guy living in California at the time before we were all over the place. So it just, that helped sort of keep us at bay. And now I'm glad because I think had we released it and not been able to like tour, it would have hurt us and it just would have sucked. And that being said, since this whole process, like we finally recorded August of 2021, we announced the record August of 2022, and it's not out until like the end of this week. It's fucking a weird feeling, man. It's just like looking at a painting that may or may not be finished, you know? It's like make a little more, you know, it's just like sitting on this thing. It makes me contemplate, like, do I like it anymore? Is it relevant? But I love it. I love it more and more. And as it's getting closer to release and playing this live, like it makes me feel like myself, you know? It does. It's getting me out of this like depressive slump that I'm comfortable in, that I'm always comfortable in. And I still feel like the tank is empty, like because I haven't given this to anyone yet, you know? It's just sitting on my phone. 3 people heard it, 4 people heard it, you know? Like I did actually write another album of something totally different with you know, in the beginning of 2020 I was just writing songs, throwing them to people, see who takes fucking the bait. And there's a band from New York called Funeral Leech, like doomy death metal. The singer's a close friend. I sent him a song and he like sent me vocals back really quick. And he left some space, some gaps. So I just added vocals and we went song by song and wrote 8 of them. And Profound Lore is going to put that out next year. And again, we still need to like put drums to it and finish it. But that was like my second wind, where I just wrote this heavier, like it's all the shit that these guys wouldn't let me write. They'd be like, it's too death metal, it's too heavy, it's too ignorant, you know? I got to write like a really ignorant, like Marauder meets Deicide type of
perfect
fantasy record.
I was about to say, which is perfect.
Yeah, it's called Dispel. Get my email from Katie or something. I'll send you the demos.
Oh, fuck yes.
Think you'd
I'll
enjoy it.
do that.
It's or it's just NYC@gmail. So
okay.
Whatever, if you remember that, I'll send you the shit. I think you'd enjoy it. But that was like my sort of second wind. And again, it's something that if I don't ever have to play it again, I'm good because I won't remember it. You know, it's just write it, get it down. It's this moment of time. So I'm curious to see where playing these songs and exhausting ourselves for another couple of years leaves us mentally. And then I would want to pick up the pen again, pick up the guitar again to see what's next for us. And, you know, like I still am in the anxious state of, I got to let the animal out of the cage to see and let it piss on everything before we could like put him back and let him get his rest and, you know, bring him out again.
Yeah. Final question, because it's on. We're recording this on Halloween, and I have to ask as a way to wrap this up. Were you doing anything for Halloween?
Rehearsing. That's about it.
The most frightening thing under the sun.
Yeah, just looking at those faces in front of me. Yeah, that's about it. Just work, and you know, we leave in 2 days, so we're super hyper focused. So to avoid the masses, and yeah. No sunlight for us, you know?
Yeah. Well, brother, I'm really happy Katie got this put together, and I'm really glad we got a chance to talk finally. Hopefully we will do it again at some point down the road. And I will definitely drop you a line as well. I for sure.
Amazing.
I'll bleep out the email so that people don't start harassing you, but so the legions don't start harassing you. But yeah, I'd love to hear that.
So that one guy that's bored that wants to email me.
Cool. Thanks, man. Stick around. I just want to say something to you when I hit stop, but we'll talk about that in a second. 29 is the name of that song. The album, of course, Regenesis, and the band Black Anvil. A massive thank you to Paul for coming on the show. What a blast catching up with that guy, and I think that it is almost inevitable that we will have another meeting at some point down the road. But for now, make sure you support Black Anvil and Season of Mist. I've posted the link to Black Anvil's Bandcamp in the description of the podcast. If you like what you heard, head over there, buy yourself some music, and make sure that you let Paul and the gang know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere that sent you. For now, though, let's move on to some other new music. There have actually been a couple of great releases over the past weekend, including the Black Anvil record. And I will do a proper review roundup maybe next week. But for now, I wanted to spend a bit of time talking about the new Trivax EP entitled The Serpent's Gaze, which was released by Cult Never Dies on October the 31st. Of note, as a sidebar, Cult Never Dies also put out another gem last year in the shape of Heathen Deities True English Black Metal, which if you haven't listened to it yet, be sure to add it to your rotation. But I was certainly very pleased to see that they had signed to Trivax. Once again, the mind boggles at why it has taken so long for that band to be picked up, but that's a conversation for a different time. Maybe we will talk about it when Cheyenne is back on the podcast. But as everybody knows who has followed this show for any length of time, I consider Cheyenne to be a friend. I've been on Iblis Manifestations, his podcast. He has been on this show many times. But what I will say as a preempt to what I'm about to say about The Serpent's Gaze, lest anybody accuse me of bias, he and I connected because of the quality of his music. I had really liked the debut Trivax record, Sin, and it just so happened that when we started talking, I think we found that we had quite a lot in common. But if we take Sin as our starting point, let me stress that as a preview, which is what this EP is intended to be, of what's to come on the upcoming Trivax full-length, the band has taken cosmic strides forward, both in terms of songcraft, in terms of musical quality. Sin was a good record, but it was demo grade in comparison to the 3 tracks that are on offer here. The album, or the EP, starts with a really eerie intro track. I am not going to attempt to pronounce the song's actual name, but my understanding is it translates to Wake Up. But it is essentially a tapestry of choral vocals, clean singing, spoken word, this very sinister sounding church organ, and as an exercise in building tension and building atmosphere and serving as a taster of the music that is to follow. It is an absolute masterclass. Once the amplifiers are cranked up and the EP's title track kicks in, The Serpent's Gaze, that is when the band gets serious. Immediately striking to me, and I did mention this to Cheyenne on message as well, but immediately striking to me, whoever was responsible for recording this EP needs massive props, because they have managed to somehow capture something that's live sounding, that has almost an analog feel to it, but the fidelity of the music is actually quite high. Very often, I think you get that kind of recording from something that sounds raw and necro and a bit like early Dark Throne records. But with this, I had the EP on the Mighty Griffin Pantheon speakers that I have as part of my hi-fi here, and it sounded absolutely sensational. So kudos to whoever was responsible for the recording. Another thing that strikes you about this, you take a song like The Serpent's Gaze, it's pretty lengthy. Off the top of my head, I think it's about 9 minutes long. It certainly doesn't feel like it's 9 minutes long. But I think one of the things that is striking about it is the amount or the meticulousness by which every single sequence, every movement of the song has been pieced together. I like that. I like the spontaneity of an early Dark Throne or early Mortal, but by the same token, when there's clearly a lot of effort and a lot of hard work that's gone into getting something to sound a specific way for a specific reason, and it's executed as brilliantly as it's done. Yeah, I mean, it brings a warmth to my heart. And in some ways, it also reminds me a bit of other things that I like, on the very opposite ends of the spectrum, like Exuvia by the Ruins of Everest. But fantastic work, all across the board. The instrumentation sounds excellent. Cheyenne's voice sounds brilliant. I love the drums. I just think this particular song just hits every right beat, and it's exactly the same case for the song that follows, Into the Void. There was a previous version of the song released as a single some time back. This one isn't drastically overhauled. It's not like you're gonna cease to recognize it, but there's certainly been some refinement that's gone into the song, and it sounds absolutely sensational. Again, in terms of hitting the right notes when it comes to atmosphere, tension, passion, aggression, I think it absolutely nails everything bang on. And it makes me extremely excited to hear what the end product is going to sound like. So from my understanding, I think that end product is scheduled for release at some point early in 2023. Which I think is good, because I think to put out stuff at the back end of the year, if your name is Mortuus and you can drop a Funeral Mist record on the 14th of December, that's one thing. But for a band like Trivax, I would like to see these guys get more recognition. I would like to see folks pay them a bit more attention, because I think they deserve it. And I think had they released this record too close to the end of the year, I think it might have gotten lost in the shuffle. What is definitely not lost in the shuffle is the track that I'm about to play right now. This is the third track off the EP, and it's called Into the Void. Into the Void by Trivax off their new EP, The Serpent's Gaze, available on Cult Never Dies Records. Not on any of the streaming services, but you can get it on Bandcamp, and you can also buy yourself a limited edition digipack if collecting hard formats is your thing. But whatever you do, there should be absolutely no excuse for you not to shell out some money and support a fine, upstanding group of young men making their way in the black metal scene. And of course, that record comes highly approved and highly recommended by yours truly. Now, my friends, it is time for the weak, woke, and cowardly to run for cover as I head over to Metal Storm for my weekly news rant. All right, let's do this shit. First headline appears to be a rather sad one. It says here that the Swiss thrashing maniacs Messiah have announced that their former vocalist Andy Kaner has suffered a heart attack and passed away. He was the band's vocalist between 1990 and 1994, and also since the band's reunion in 2017 up until 2021. So sad news there. It says here, the band's statement reads, "Dear Messiah fans and friends, unfortunately today we have to bring you the sad news and mourn the death of our friend Andy Kaner. He suffered a heart attack and never woke up from the artificial coma. We're shocked and saddened and wish his family strength and all the best from the bottom of our hearts. His legacy lives on in the music of Messiah, and we consider ourselves lucky to have recorded great albums with him. Andy, we will miss you." I don't really know much about Messiah, but I know enough about, about being a human being to know that you can't help but feel for Andy and for his family and friends. And also for the folks in Messiah. Judging by the photo that they've included there, I would assume he's probably in his early to mid-50s, which, again, is way too young for anybody to die. So strength and, condolences to those nearest and dearest to him. Nothing much else to say. Just that it's shitty news, and it's awful to read these sorts of things because I feel like they're happening with greater frequency. Next up, we have news about a band from Serbia called Terror Hammer. They are described here as a Serbian black and thrash outfit who have presented their new single, At Dawn We Attack, taken from the upcoming Gateways to Hades album, due on November the 25th, 2022 through Osmos Productions. Generally speaking, as soon as I see the Osmos Productions logo tacked onto anything, I'm almost always interested to hear what's on offer. I would say Osmos's quality has been a little sketchy when it comes to releases over the last decade or so, but they have a legacy, and the legacy counts for an awful lot. So let's listen to At Dawn We Attack. I can take that or leave it. I don't think it's bad, but, there is a new Destroyer 666 on the horizon. And, given that that is music in a similar vein, it makes me think that perhaps I might not be as motivated to listen to Terror Hammer. And also what it does remind me of is the fact that I have been absolutely overdosing on Live Undead and Haunting the Chapel by Slayer, both of which are absolutely fantastic. And actually, over the last maybe 2-3 years have fast started usurping my previous Slayer favorites. I think previously my favorite Slayer album was Seasons in the Abyss and From Time to Time South of Heaven. But I just think Live Undead and Haunting the Chapel are so good. It's kind of knocking that it's kind of knocking that equation for a loop. Next up, we've got news about another band who I've not heard of before, but who boast an absolutely fantastic name, Ominous Scriptures, described as a Belarusian brutal death metal outfit, have just announced their third full-length album, Rituals of Mass Self-Ignition, which is also a fucking great name for an album. It's said that it is set to be released via Willowtip Records on the 27th of January 2023, and you can listen to the first single, Demonic Totem I Am Below. 27th of January, if memory serves me correctly, is also the birthday of one of my best friends. So there are a number of good omens here. Great band name, great album title. I actually like the song title too. It seems to me from this thumbnail that I'm seeing here that the album cover is pretty cool too. So let's hope that that they live up, at least in part, to my expectations. Afraid that's another pass for me. I don't like the drum production, especially the snare drum. It sounds really tinny. I think the vocals are very monotonous, and that riff is kind of all over the place. This is a style of music that is very much hit or miss with me. So I can see that there are going to be a lot of people that are going to hear Ominous Scriptures and probably think that it is the bee's knees sucking on a dog's bollocks. But when I'm going to hear this style of music, I'm going to err towards bands like Pyrexia. And more importantly, the old masters, Suffocation, Dying Fetus. I'd listen to Dechristianized by Vital Remains. Those sorts of stuff. I'm not sure I would get much out of this that other bands can't deliver, and deliver a lot better. Moving on, Amorphous have premiered The Well, which is a song that is taken apparently off their freshly released Halo Tour Edition record. I must admit that I've given up more or less on Amorphous, I'd say pretty much since Elegy. I think Elegy, and I can't even remember when that record came out. I think it must have been like 1994, 1995. But that was an album that I thought had its moments, and probably was kind of the closest that Amorphous ever came to the type of band that I would, or to a band that I would listen to. But in the main, I think one of the things that I intensely dislike about them is they seem to straddle this fine line between sounding like a band that your mother would find acceptable and a band who's trying to be heavy, and they rarely get it right on either side. So that being said, this has been a year of a great many surprises. So who knows? The Well might be the song that brings me back into the Amorphous fold. We're going to find out whether that is indeed the case. Yawn. It says here, the well tells a story about an individual causing chaos and mayhem by breaking the principles of society. It's a timeless force phenomenon repeating itself in the history of time, a kind of natural force among the humankind, vocalist Tommy Utzon states. The song itself is drawing some influences from the early Scandinavian, early black metal, and classic oriental amorphous vibes. This one is on the heavier side of the material recorded during the Halo album sessions on 2021. His broken English aside, I think it is dull as dishwater. Again, I understand there will definitely be an audience for this, but I am not amongst that audience. However, reading the line about an individual causing chaos and mayhem, last week I spoke about my Halloween films for 2022. I watched, I think I mentioned I was going to watch Terrifier 2, Barbarian, and Pearl. I've not gotten around to watching Terrifier 2 yet. However, I watched Barbarian, which is absolutely superb. And then straight after that, I watched Pearl, which I am going to say outright most likely is going to be my favorite movie of this year. And I will also bestow upon it potentially the greatest accolade of all, that being the accolade of calling it top-notch. I mean, it is absolutely incredible. I really enjoyed X, but for me, I think Pearl is something completely different. It is extraordinarily well-directed, well acted. I think Mia Goth, if there were any true justice in the world, she would be getting an Oscar nomination for this, or she'd be getting award nominations by the fucking bucket load. She is absolutely fantastic. There's, towards the end of the film, there's probably about a 5 to 7 minute monologue where the camera is trained on her, and it's done all in one take, and it will give you, especially if you're a student of great acting, it will give you goosebumps. It is amongst the very best acting I've seen from somebody, maybe since Toni Collette had her episode at the dinner table in Hereditary. And actually, on the topic of Hereditary, I would say I think Pearl might be my favorite horror movie since I saw Hereditary. And if anybody has seen this podcast enough or listened to this podcast enough, you'll know what I think of that movie. So I could not recommend that you see that film more strongly. And actually, don't let that detract from the fact that you should also watch Barbarian. As I said, Terrifier 2, not seen that yet. I keep hearing very good things, including from the Mikes, Scondado and Hill on, on Necromaniacs. They just turned in an absolutely brilliant episode, incidentally, about Hellraiser. And it was so fucking funny that I had to rack my weights back up because I was listening to it in the gym. And when Mike Hill used the word mates, I think it was like something in the context of, okay, mates, in his accent, I fucking burst out laughing, and I thought, lest the bar crush my windpipe, let me just compose myself before I carry on with my set. But yeah, great episode. And as I've said many times before, my favorite podcast, bar none. It is the one that I listen to as a priority as soon as it comes out. The only reason I didn't listen to it on the day of its release this past week was because I had some shit going on at work. Not bad shit, but just, stuff that kept me busy. But Pearl, fantastic. Necromaniacs, also fantastic. So, let us move on. Ingested have premiered a new video. We can almost certainly guess what that's going to sound like. We might be a little better served on this podcast, at least, checking out the new Varmia single. So it says here, Polish pagan black metal outfit Varmia have just premiered a video for their new song Odol, taken from the band's upcoming Prologue EP, due on January the 6th, 2023. You can watch the video done by Michal Pilat below. Poland and black metal, instant win. Let's give this a listen. Now, I said Poland and black metal is an instant win. What I meant is it's an instant must listen. I mean, you at the very least, if it comes from Poland and it's black metal, you know there's a good chance it's going to be, you know, reasonably decent. But that being said, Varmia is fucking excellent, and they prove my point that you should always keep your eyes peeled for Polish black metal. How I missed these guys, I have no idea. I was just looking on Metal Archive while they was playing. They have got out 3 albums so far, including Ballada, which came out last year in I can't remember when it was. As a matter of fact, how should I remember what it was? March 12th. But yeah, good stuff. Really, really, really good stuff. I like the atmosphere. I like the riff. I like everything. It sounds dark. It sounds sinister. I am, without a shadow of a doubt, going to have to pay Varmia a hell of a lot more attention. I must be honest, I sat here thinking after we went through those first couple of songs that this week was going to be a bit flat in comparison to some of the weeks we've had on the Into the Necrosphere news rant, but this is absolutely fantastic. Another great find, and that song is superb. All right, next up we've got Murmur from Spain. They are Spanish extreme metal newcomers who have premiered their first ever video for the track Sol Invictus. It is taken from their debut album Putrefactio, which was released earlier this week. They have got a music video here, so let's listen. That is fucking superb. First of all, let me say, Beatrice Bennett, the singer there, has got a set of lungs on her. She sounds absolutely fantastic. I love her voice, but I also really, really love kind of the rhythm that she has when she's doing vocals. Great work. Love the riff. Just love the overall vibe of the song. And then I've noticed, to my, I guess I shouldn't be surprised anymore by these sorts of things, but to my dismay, this band is still unsigned. So how that's possible, I have no idea, because this is absolutely fucking brilliant. Love it. Let's get back to it. I have to say, I quite like the art direction for the music video as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see what I mean. It's a nice, refreshing change from what seems to be the trend right now, which is the storyboarded videos that typically feature an old man running around in his fucking underpants on the beach. And the other day I saw something where, we had slow motion headbanging, which was also extraordinarily lame. So, yeah. Murmur have a thumbs up for me. So that's two great bands that we've discovered so far on this round of the news rant. But definitely two bands that I want to spend a lot more time listening to. Isa Fjord have premiered a new single. Isa Fjord, the new project from Adi Tryggvason of Solstafir, and Ragnar Zolberg, who is with a band called Sign, and previously he was with Pain of Salvation, have signed to Svart Records and will release their debut album, Jartatsky. I'm sure I butchered that, but so be it. They're releasing that on the 2nd of December, and you can listen to their new single, Min Svarta Hilo, as well as the previously released single, Fallen Skemmt Below. Don't know these guys. Pain of Salvation, not a bad band. Solstafir, very good band. Let's hear what these two. Well, I was about to say bearded bucks, but only one of them has a beard. Let's hear what these two lads have come up with.
Mín svarta hlið velur storminn við hvert andartak. Þín svarta hlið, þín svarta hlið, kvíðaköstin kalla á geðlyf.
I'm not hating that. I think that's pretty good. I'm wondering whether the Icelandic, and I mean no offense to any of my Icelandic brethren or sisters that are listening to this podcast, but I'm wondering if the Icelandic is going to wear on me after a while. And I would assume they're busy singing in Icelandic, by the way. So if I'm wrong on that, then it's double apologies. But yeah, as I said, I like the melody very much, and I think the vocals are pretty reasonable too. I mean, it's a bit mellow, but yeah, not bad at all. I'll tell you what is bad: Suicide Silence. So we're going to give their latest single and video a immediate skip. We also see on a following headline that Fit for an Autopsy are doing a co-headlining tour with the Acacia Strain. Don't really care about Fit for an Autopsy, but I do very much love the Acacia Strain. I was talking with Paul about Neanderthal violent shit, and let me play you guys a quick snippet by the Acacia Strain that I think everyone at some point should listen to. They're not a band that's, they're not going to be, it's not brain fodder when you listen to them. Let's put it that way. But they are a band that are just a hell of a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoy listening to them. It's great gym music as well. But the song in question that I wanted to play you guys a clip out of is off a brilliant record that they put out, I believe, back in 2012 called Death is the Only Mortal. I might be wrong. It could be 2012 or 2010. I'm not 100% sure. But the song is called The Mouth of the River. And it features one of the hardest vocal pieces that I have ever heard in my entire life. So let me cue this up and let me just find the bit where he does this. So I think at about 2 minutes 57 seconds is where it's gonna thoroughly kick in. So if I've not gotten it quite right, it doesn't matter. There's enough badassness to tide you over or to keep you happy for the next minute anyway.
Grasping for reality and shaking my head. I don't need sleep, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Just when I thought it was over, they found the bodies in the mouth of the river.
I think we're a little past the bit that I had in mind, but either way, that's fucking brilliant. Again, like I said, I don't really like deathcore very much, and when I listen to the Acacia Strain, I'm not exactly listening to it to experience some sort of grand enlightenment, but they're a very fun band. Their live shows less so, though. I remember going to see them play in this must have been 2008, 2009, and I was with a friend of mine, and I said to him, if we don't leave here inside of the next 5 minutes, tonight I will be spending in prison. Because there was ample number of people in the audience that took it upon themselves to start doing their windmill kicks and their little fucking bullshit kung fu fighting in the pit. And as far as I'm concerned, if ever you see me at a show and you do that and you hit me in the face or hit me anyway, if you graze me slightly, I don't give a shit if it's a fucking accident. You are going to get an ass kicking of epic proportions. It's one thing to throw down in the pit. It's that's all fine, but when people start kicking and punching and stuff, and then everyone must just stand back because Sonny Fuckface is busy working through his personal demons, at the metal show. That to me is unacceptable. I don't think anybody has the right to sour somebody else's night or to make any situation or any environment, especially at a show, uncomfortable for them just because they want to have a good time. And again, if your idea of having a good time is throwing kicks and punches at the air whilst everybody around has to fucking scurry for cover, you can go fuck yourself. But anyway. Crippled Black Phoenix have put out a new video for the song Bonefire, which comes off their last record, Banefire. I really like Banefire. I really like everything I've heard so far of that album. I've not really spent too much time listening to it back to back, but something that I definitely will do. We also then have news of another Season of Mist band, The Abbey, who have premiered their first song. It says here, The Abbey is a new band featuring past and present members of bands like Shape of Despair, Sentenced, and The Man-Eating Tree. And they have now made a triple announcement. Not only have they announced the release of their debut called Word of Sin, which is due out on the 17th of February next year, but they have also signed to Season of Mist, and we can now get a taste off of the forthcoming record via 1,000 Dead Witches. Don't know this band, but it is Season of Mist, so need to give it a spin. Let's hear what the Abbey have come up with. Silence meets us as we start the video, presumably to allow for the storyboarding of a woman with a whip of some sort entering the, I can only assume some sort of depravity arena, but I'm going to skip in about 30 seconds, and hopefully the song has started to go somewhere when we next rejoin it. So I was right about the woman with a whip entering some sort of depravity emporium, because it seems as though the idea for the video includes a man sat in a circle of fire whilst nude or scantily clad temptresses, some might even call them slatterns, are dancing around him, waving their breasts in his face. One of them has nipples that look pretty mutated. I must be honest. If I were her, I would not appear in a state of undress in public. But the rest of them aren't bad. Tell you what else isn't bad: the song. It reminds me a little bit of. There's kind of like a slight black metal tinge to that riff. And then you've got these like harmonized vocals, like the man and woman singing as one. That I like. I actually just like the whole vibe of the song. Feels to me like this is a band who could very easily go on tour with a band like Ghost and land very, very well with their audience. Go out with Merciful Fate or a band like that. It's good stuff. I like it. It says here, the band comments, "We feel honored and privileged to get to write a new chapter in the history of Season of Mist, a distinguished label that has the courage and vision to do something extraordinary. We do believe that the collaboration between Season of Mist and the Abbey is going to lead us to great things. Our first single has all the basic Abbey elements: big vocals, dissonant harmonies, hauntingly beautiful melodies and tempo changes. This is the Abbey's ode against oppression and tyranny." Let's give it another minute. I'm assuming the oppression of which they speak here is symbolized through this guy apparently containing himself whilst these naked women dance around him. Although I would also say it's a little tone deaf given the current zeitgeist of Me Too and men keeping their hands to themselves. But again, maybe that's a conversation for a different time. Motionless in White have put out a new video for a song called Werewolf. Not something that I would like to listen to, because I think Motionless in White are better served changing their name to Motionless in Shite. Vended have premiered their new single. From memory, Vended is the band that feature, there it says, Griffin Taylor, son, crotch spawn of Corey Taylor of Slipknot fame. And I think that Sean Crahan, aka Clown's son, might be in this band as well. So it says here, Griffin Taylor comments, Overall is a song, which apparently the song is called Overall. Overall is a song about getting trapped in your own head and having your thoughts self-sabotage you, and how sometimes you are the only person who can help yourself get out of that headspace. I salt the wound myself has a double meaning. You either feel the pain from bad thoughts, or you lean into it and embrace them. I haven't heard Vended, but obviously all of you know my thoughts on Slipknot, and also on young Griffin's dad's views on politics and most of the world. But I think we're all going to sit back and study this song together. Just hitting pause there for a second. I mean, these guys could, instead of calling themselves Vended, which is a terrible name for a band, I think they should have called themselves Sons of Slipknot, because this literally sounds exactly like Slipknot, all the way down to Griffin's kind of opening yell. I mean, that is if you didn't tell me that there were, progenies of Slipknot in this band, then I would just have thought it's a band ripping Slipknot off, which technically they still are. But let's get back to it.
I'm stuck in another cycle. Get out of my head. Cut the thread. Disconnect. Where to start? I know. I lost it. They all fled. I lost it. They all fled. Once again, just like all my sins, I tangled in the web. I shut my head in a box. Pandora opened it. No one else was even there to watch. It's leeching off my own. I self-reward myself. But evidence seems like I must.
Tell you what, I actually am going to throw out a very controversial opinion here and say they should call themselves Better Than Slipknot, because they are better than Slipknot. I mean, that's a better song than anything Slipknot has put out for at least 3 albums. I mean, it's still not something that I'm going to listen to, unless I'm under threat of being murdered with a machete. But it's a hell of a lot better than fucking Shitnot, that's for sure. And that clean sound chorus isn't bad. I mean, again, not massively my kind of thing, but they certainly seem to be very into what they're doing. And for a second there, I was thinking to myself, maybe the scheme is that this will be kind of like Gwar, where it seems like people just inherit the masks or inherit the characters. Maybe the plan is for Griffin and for Clown's son to inherit the Slipknot masks when their dads give it up and retire, and the band will just carry on carrying on. But then I also remember that they've apparently been talking recently about only putting out singles. So, but yeah, for what it's worth, not too bad from old Griffin Taylor, and I still think that they're better than Slipknot. Over on the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music, we see that Rob Halford, first and foremost, is telling us that words used incorrectly can be terribly destructive and hurtful and painful. In an interview with SiriusXM's The Eric Alper Show, Judas Priest singer Rob Halford spoke about how becoming the first metal icon to announce he is gay in 1998 during an MTV interview served as an inspiration to fans who were struggling with similar emotions. I've become a dad, Halford launched laughed, I should say, sorry. As transcribed by blabbermouth.net, I am a dad. My kids, Glenn, always used to call the fans the kids. He still does. I'm like, Glenn, they're as old as we are. He goes, no, they're still kids because we are all kids at heart. It's important to find that child inside of you to keep that nurtured. I'm going to skip past a couple of things here because there's an awful lot of talk. But the basic premise of this is summarized in the following paragraph. That is the great thing about music. When we were kids, we hated our mom and dad and school and friends and blah, 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 but we loved our music. Our music was our only friends. Our music spoke to us. Our music was the one tangible emotion we could relate to, and we could say, yes, that song is about me, or I know how that song feels like. Not really much about him coming out as gay. But then again, I must be honest, and I don't want to sound like I'm being insensitive here, but I can't remember there being any great backlash when Rob Halford came out at all. As a matter of fact, I remember being really surprised by the degree to which everybody just accepted it. I myself obviously did not care, but at the same time, you would assume that in a scene, particularly in the late 90s, was very male dominated, there would be at least some degree of pushback or some degree of negative energy coming the way of Old Man Halford, but I don't think that there was. And it feels to me like all of a sudden there's a really big deal being made about this, and I for the life of me can't quite put my finger on the context. Maybe I missed something, but I was always a voracious reader of every magazine I could lay my hands on, and obviously they all spoke about this. But as I said, I cannot once recall somebody saying anything negative about Rob Halford, about Judas Priest, anything like that. So anyway, let's go on. Sharon Osbourne and why she and Ozzy are leaving America. We don't feel safe here. You know that it's gotten bad when people that can afford serious private security don't feel safe in the country anymore. So she says they've clarified why she and her husband Ozzy Osbourne have made the decision to leave the United States and return to live in England. In August, Ozzy cited gun violence as one of the main reasons for the move, saying he was fed up with people getting killed every day. Sharon also manages Ozzy's career and told Consequence the decision was made easier by the fact that California is not what it once was. When I first came here, I thought I was in heaven, she said. In the 70s, if you loved music, this was the place to be. It's not that hub anymore. It's not exciting anymore. It hasn't gone sideways. It's gone down. It's not a fun place to live. It's dangerous here. Every big city's got crime, but I don't feel safe here. Interesting that they're moving back to the UK, though, because the statistic I read recently was that only 8.3% of crimes in the UK actually move to prosecution, which is down from an already shameful 15.5%. So if safety is what they're after, best look elsewhere, because there's not much of it to be found in the UK. I mean, it's not like people are running around in the street with, knives and guns killing each other, but I mean, certainly the crime has gone up here. The one thing I did find hysterical, though, and obviously as we approach the midterms, which by the time you listen to this, either will have already happened or is looming on the horizon, the rhetoric is just unhinged on both sides. But I will say, particularly on the Democrat side, one of the two most insane things I've heard recently was Joy Reid, chief cretin on MSNBC, saying that inflation is something that the GOP taught people, and that it's racist to talk about it. And then the other thing that I saw was an article, I can't remember what news site this was on, but they were talking about how, aside from murder, violent crime is actually not up in America. It's like, well, murder is up. Surely that's the most violent crime, and that's the one people should be most concerned about. But anyway, good luck to Sharon and to Ozzy. Again, I don't really think if you have their sort of scratch, you need to worry too much. But anyway, next up we see that Metallica played a special concert consisting of songs from the first two albums to honor Johnny and Marsha Zezula. The setlist looked very tasty. Started with Creeping Death, then went on to Ride the Lightning, Motor Breath, No Remorse, Trapped Under Ice, Call of Cthulhu, Phantom Lord, Am I Evil, Metal Militia, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Whiplash, Fate of Black, and Seek and Destroy. So pretty damn good. Encore was really good as well. When Paul mentioned James as like the one of the sort of prototype frontmen that he was looking up to when he was growing up, it did remind me of just how good James Hetfield used to be in especially kind of the late 80s, early 90s as a frontman. I mean, he was incredible. And some would argue, I think you could make a very good argument to say untouchable. Sadly, nowadays, not so much. He's mellowed out too much. Being off the drink has chilled him out a bit too much. And I'm not somebody who wants to hear someone talk about enjoying the metal moment. But there was a time, lest anybody forget, that few could come anywhere close to what Old Man James was able to do on a stage. Poison's Ricky Rocket blames social media for helping create a culture war. Poison drummer Ricky Rocket has lamented the fact that social media platforms are breeding grounds for the spread of fake news and misinformation, which also contributes to the political divide in the United States of America. Earlier today, 2 days before the midterm elections, the 61-year-old musician shared a photo of an American flag on his Instagram and posted the following message: "I don't like talking politics, but it's all the rage these days, I suppose. When I was growing up, my mom's side of the family were Republicans and my dad's side were Democrats. We all shared holidays, birthdays, and events. Did they argue? Sure they did. What East Coast family doesn't? But at the end of the day, there was a level of respect that we have lost today. The potshots today are insane. Back then, the most divisive thing was probably rock versus disco. Now people want a civil war if they don't get their way. Maybe Devo was right about the future. Judah evolution. I don't know what that is supposed to mean. Anyways, don't get me wrong, it can be healthy to be spirited about your beliefs. However, I now see people adopting beliefs simply based on the party they have chosen. I've gone from Republican to Libertarian to Independent in just a few short years. I care about policies, not parties. The current situation is insane, and I blame social media. Social media has helped to create a culture war. At the heart of what people think is political is more a culture jam. Social media is the new propaganda machine." I think he's kind of right. I think, as a matter of fact, no, I take that back. I think he's on the right track, but I think he is. I think his analysis is wrong, and here's why I think it's wrong. I think social media is the tool. It's not the cause. There has been, I feel like you could make an argument that there's been a culture war that's been going on certainly since the late 60s. I mean, with the counterculture, the Vietnam protests and things like that. That carried through into the 70s. You had the hyper political correctness in the 1980s. I think the main difference between the culture war then and the culture war now is that it has more participants because, yes, social media has provided people with more of a platform, to be able to vent and to be able to argue and bicker and, debate, or own the other side, as these plebs would say on YouTube. But when social media first started, I mean, MySpace wasn't a haven of, people giving each other shit about who they voted for. Frankly, nor was Facebook when that first started. I think from my observation, I think where things started to go really pear-shaped was around 2012 with Obama's re-election. His re-election campaign, very stolidly, used social media, used it very effectively because he didn't have a very good first term, and used it very effectively to get himself re-elected. But one of the things that if you go back and you look at mainstream media and how they changed around about that time, they really kind of latched onto the outrage culture that was brewing on social media. And I think whilst it was contained to small fringes, maybe Facebook groups and things like that, I think that they fanned the flames of that massively because they realized that was the way for them to keep getting clicks, keep retaining some sort of audience, because people were starting to move away from them. They weren't consuming news media through television or through cable TV and particularly through print media anymore. And so, even when it comes to the way that headlines were written, for example, you can see that shift around 2012. I remember, very distinctly remember it happening and wondering who taught these fucking idiots to write. Prior to that, a headline would read, as an example, "My kill of necromaniacs decries poor script writing in new Hellraiser movie." So that would have been the headline. No telling you what to think, anything like that. And then post 2012, the headline would be reworded as such: "My kill of necromaniacs has just blasted the script writing on the new Hellraiser reboot. Here's why that makes him a misogynist and a racist." And that's basically what happened. And this is why I say I think there's always been a culture war. I think distrust in the media, started to, become a real issue for the media during the Iraq War, and that's because they carried water for a regime that lied and got America, and certainly here in the UK, got the UK bundled into a war that they shouldn't have been involved in. They were caught out in their lie. They then doubled down on it. And so when that distrust in the media, happened, people started moving to social media. Then they got in on the game. And then it's gotten progressively worse every single year since, because I think there's a... I hate to call it this because maybe this is the wrong way to say it, but I think there's almost like a chemical reaction or chemical response to people, or that people experience when they're arguing and bickering and fighting and trying to own each other online. And I think people get addicted to it. I think they get addicted to the feeling of arguing and fighting. Like you can get addicted, I guess, to anything. There's also a degree of desperation for validation that a lot of particularly young people are chasing all the time, and especially because they live all of their life on social media, so they post whatever crazy nonsense is on there because they know it's going to give them more clicks, more likes, etc. But I mean, at the end of the day, and I know I'm kind of going off on a slight tangent here, so hopefully you're still with me. But at the end of the day, I think what people need to understand is the folks benefiting from this divide and benefiting from, who are and will continue to use social media as a weapon is the politicians, and they'll use social media as a weapon through their propaganda arm in the mainstream media. And I honestly don't really know what we do to change it. I don't want social media to go away. I also don't want the news media to be regulated, or censored in any way. I believe in a free press. I think perhaps some of the protections that the social media companies enjoy as platforms as opposed to publishers, I do agree with that. I know Tulsi Gabbard has tried to, work on getting that. Getting that changed, getting those protections taken away. I think that's definitely a good first step. I think, maybe creating a scenario where, the news media can be sued for lying, I think is definitely something that they should consider as well. But I don't see that happening because, like I said, if you know who's benefiting from this, they are the overlords and the elites that control all of us, and that's just all there is to it. And whilst we bicker about pronouns and we bicker about nonsense like whether women soccer players should be paid as much as male soccer players, or we bicker about even nonsense like Elon Musk letting people go from Twitter. Like every other fucking company on the face of the earth isn't firing people in mass right now because of the economy or the economic conditions that these same people created. They just seem to be able to, whilst we're distracted, they can get away with all sorts of crazy shit. And very few people are actually wise to what's going on. Something I read recently, there's 15,000 cars per month being repossessed in America right now because interest rates have gone up. People have come to the end of their personal contract purchase agreements, and now they're having to refinance those cars. They were leveraged to the hilt previously. And now they can't afford it anymore, so now they're losing their cars. The exact same thing will happen when people have to start refinancing their homes. There was another statistic that I read that said the interest rate increases here in the UK are putting over 800,000 households at risk of foreclosure. And that is going to lead to if it gets that bad that even a half of that contingent of people lose their homes. you will see mass civil unrest in the streets. But again, people don't see it coming because they are distracted by the drivel and the meaningless nonsense on social media, by the sideshows, the soap opera. I mean, and in the meantime, the politicians just carry on. They enrich themselves whilst the rest of us suffer. There's a really, really good Twitter account called, I think it's called Unusual Wales. And I might have mentioned him on the News Rant previously, but he spoke a while back, or he gave like a breakdown of who has made a substantial amount of money in 2021 on the stock market. And if you look at it, it's a reasonably even split between Republicans and Democrats, but proves my point. Pigs feeding from the same trough, and they will continue to do so. And whilst they have money and influence, the rest of us need to just figure out how we manage going forward. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. I know I'm not saying anything conclusive, probably not saying anything people don't know. Yeah, but just thought I'd weigh in on old Ricky Rocket's opinion. Like I said, I don't think he's completely wrong, but as I said, I differ from him a little bit. All right. Let's do maybe 2 more. Anthrax's Frank Bello releases music video for title track of debut solo EP, Then I'm Gone. It says here, Anthrax bassist Frank Bello has released the official music video for the title track of his debut solo EP, Then I'm Gone, issued as a deluxe gatefold split via Rarebird. The EP contains 3 songs alongside excerpts from his 2021 autobiography, incidentally authored by, or co-authored, I believe, by Joel McIver, who's a former Into the Necrosphere guest, and is also accompanied by new music. Never heard Frank Bello sing, but I've always thought he was a cool presence on stage. I always thought he looked very good on stage, and added something cool to the band. So let's have a quick listen to what his solo work sounds like. Not my speed, but I will throw out another controversial opinion. I think I would sooner take Frank Bello vocaling for Anthrax than I would Poodle Hair Belladonna. I remember reading something not too long ago about Joey Belladonna coming up with some cockeyed reason as to why he won't sing Only, which was a John Bush era song. And we both know the real reason for that, and that is that he does not have the chops that John Bush has. All right, let's wrap it up with another progeny act. This time, the band in question is Taipei Houston, which features the sons of one Lars Ulrich of Metallica fame. They have put out a new music video for a song called Respecter. It says, the band features Miles and Lane Ulrich, sons of Metallica drummer Lars Ulrich, and the track is taken from Taipei Houston's debut album, Once Bit, Never Bored. Don't know what these guys sound like, but we're about to find out. Much like Frank Bello, that is not my speed, but I'll tell you what, I don't like the name Taipei Houston whatsoever, but here's a name that I do like for them. The riffs that James won't let my dad use. I bet you some of these riffs definitely come from Lars, and he's sitting in his room going, God damn, James Hetfield won't let me play these in Metallica. Yeah. I guess it's. I mean, is it better or worse than Vended, that are just basically doing a tribute to their dad's band? I don't know. Either way, I'm not all that keen on it, but I do tell you what I am very certain of. We have come to the end of another epic news rant. If you've stuck around until the very end, thank you so much. I am back next week with the gentlemen from Veilburner to talk about their upcoming record. We also spoke about their collection of oddities. We spoke about the occult. Really, really fun conversation. And of course, I had Veilburner featured on the News Rant segment. When they heard that, they got in touch. And that ended up being a really, really fun conversation. They've also been such a find musically. Just end-to-end brilliance in their discography. So if they're a band that you haven't heard much of yet or haven't spent too much time listening to yet, I strongly suggest you change that ahead of next week's episode. The week after, I have got Matt Prizzo and Kelly T of Kelly T Reviews, Slaves to the Underground podcast, and now Matt Prizzo's recently resurrected Spells of Torment band. High time that those guys made an appearance in public again, and it was only right that appearance be on Into the Necrosphere. So that's coming up. I also have two other guests in the pipeline as I round out the year. Not going to say anything just yet, but I suspect they will all meet the stern seal of approval by the Into the Necrosphere legions. In the meantime, my friends, I hope that wherever it is that you are, whatever it is that you are doing, you are staying safe, staying healthy, staying strong. And I will see all of you bad motherfuckers again next week as I play out with a track by next week's guests, Veilburner.